Hey everyone, welcome to the Leadership Lab podcast where we are developing the heart and soul of leaders. Welcome to season 2.
Season 2.
We're
right
so
now.
excited. My name is Bianca.
My name is Jeremiah, and today we're going to be talking about you had one job. Have you searched this hashtag online?
Yeah.
Hashtag you had one job. It always shows humorous examples of when somebody should have done something a certain way and then it didn't turn out to be right or complete. I saw one the other day where there was a bike path that was painted on the side of the road, and then there was a big storm drain that was there that obviously a bicycle tire would have got stuck in it. And so it was humorous because it's like you had one job. Make a bike path that bicycles can actually travel down. Well, I had something really funny happened just the other day. You were out of town for a family event, and my daughter's tooth fell out.
Yeah.
And for the whole life, 11 years of her life, whenever she's lost a tooth, we've always, 100% of the time, perfect record, been able to deliver on the tooth fairy.
Yeah.
I had one job.
You had one job.
And I did not do it. She came in the morning and she shakes her little tooth container at me and says, hey, you had one job. But I think this is important because as leaders and as team members, we need to make sure that we, number one, stay clear about our role.
Yeah.
You got to know what your role is.
Yeah.
I believe it's the leader's role to provide clarity, to clarify what the vision is, and it's the team member's job to bring clarification through their actions and through the things that they're doing.
Yeah, that's good. And I think that it's something that is initial and evolutionary. So finding that clarity, we know when you first get a job, your boss typically will do an interview process and he'll say, hey, the role is this, and I want you to do X, Y, Z. So it's initial, but then it's evolutionary because as you step into this role and as an organization grows, then the role starts to develop. And it's very easy to even forget what were the initial expectations of that leader or that boss. And so whether you're the leader or you're that team leader, it's important that we ask the questions, that we get the clarity. I think it's always important to ask, is this still what you expect of me?
That's great.
And following up and asking that leader, I think is very, very helpful. And I think more importantly is over time, you'll get to know the people you're working with. So you kind of know, okay, they like this or they don't like this. And that's really, really important.
It's so good to have those kind of conversations that are clarifying things because sometimes when a role starts, it's one way, but then as it evolves, as you've discovered strengths and weaknesses of different people on the team, things shift and your role becomes a little bit different. And so going back to that leader that you have, or if you are the leader of the team, going back to those team members and saying, hey, how's things feel? How's it working right now? What do you think is a strength? What do you think is a weakness? What ways do you think that maybe if you have a job description, hey, would you like to, rewrite that or edit that job description based on where your job has taken you and where it's led today? And by job, let's just clarify, we're actually meaning the role. So it might even be like a volunteer role somewhere, but it's that job description. It's that role summary of what that thing requires.
And I want to really call leaders to accountability here because if you're having frustration with your team not fulfilling roles and you find that we're not going towards the vision that was once cast and we need to switch to vision dripping and making sure we're daily sharing the vision, we need to go back and take responsibility and say, I might not have been as clear as I could have been, and how can I be clear with this specific team member or the overall team? But also, if you're a team member, but you're also leading people, to make sure that you ask questions. If you feel like the person that is leading you seems frustrated, ask the questions. Well, I did this. Is this not what you were expecting? And have those sometimes weird conversations, but they're healthy, but it helps bring that clarification. And it's so important. I think we can grow together and move together.
So good.
And so you want to make sure you understand your role. But the next thing is to remove friction and complexity. When we're moving forward, when we're going towards a vision, it is an upward stream journey constantly. You're never going downward stream.
Yeah.
And so any ways that we can remove that head-on pressure then we're going to be able to continue to reach the goals that we want. And so, I mean, I even think about it with exercising. I mean, that's just what we all know we're supposed to exercise. We all know that's part of fitness and health. Yet, how many of us, we have a hard time staying consistent exercising. And so I know for myself, one of the times when I'm having my longest stretches of exercising consistently is when I've taken the time to remove friction. I know what I'm wearing the next day. I put my pre-workout on the counter. I just make it where it's little less pressure to accomplish the thing that is important to me.
So good.
So whatever area we're leading, whatever it is we're doing, we've set things up so that I can get to that goal that I want to. But that takes a little bit of time and preparation.
Yeah.
So removing that friction and also removing complexity. I think sometimes we overthink things. We try to make things fancy or we try to be cool. And I want to say we need to set those things aside and just focus on simplifying things in our life.
That's so good. And I think it's important as a leader that you're able to provide that simplicity rather than the complexity. I think as younger leaders are becoming more mature as leaders, they find out that, hey, all of that stuff that I thought was important really wasn't even important at all. All of that time I spent crafting that document, making that statement, making this thing look like this. Those aren't the things that are really important to people. You want to get out of people's way so that they can execute what it is that they've been asked to do. I think one of the best ways to do this is to create systems. Systems are simply who does what, when, and how. You write it down on a paper. Who's going to do this thing? When are they going to do it? How are they going to get it done? You want to make sure it's very clear so that people can execute what the vision and what the mission of the organization is. Systems really bring that simplification and remove that complexity out of it because people know what it is that they're supposed to do.
And they also, I mean, systems work for you. If you're going to be a great leader, you want to become a person that when you step away, things are still moving. Things are still moving towards the vision. And so putting systems in place, and great leaders have to take some time to say, I've got to find this person to do this thing at this time so that when I step away, it's a well-oiled machine and it's still operating. And that's when you become an invaluable leader, when you put those systems into place.
Yeah, and if you're having systems that work while you're not there, you're multiplying yourself rather than just adding. If things have to happen while you're there, you're just adding.
You're just adding.
But if things can happen when you're not there, that's when you're getting to that place where you're really multiplying yourself, multiplying your efforts, multiplying your time, and you're becoming highly effective. The most valuable team members are multipliers. The people that can be counted on, they're multiplying their efforts, and they're always bringing some lift to the entire organization. The third thing, and the final thing we want to talk about today, is make checklists and revisit them. So we're making checklists of the systems and who's doing what and how they're getting done, and then revisiting those things. I think that sometimes we can set some things in place, but then we never go back to them, and so really just putting in place really never even accomplish anything because we're not going back and looking at those things again.
That's so good. And even the greatest people, astronauts, they went out in space. You know, they made some checklists. You know that the people that were building these rockets and all of that, they had checklists so that they made sure that there were no accidents because there have been accidents in the past. And so you have these checklists. And even a mom that's going to the grocery store to get groceries for her family for the week, she has a checklist. And so it's important that if we're really going to accomplish what we want to accomplish, we have to have some checklists. And I want to share the difference between a checklist and a to-do list. Because we've all done the to-do list thing, and I do it too. But there's a difference between a checklist and a to-do list. A to-do list is accomplishing and completing a task. It's like, okay, remove the clothes from the washer to the dryer. Check. It is done. That task is completed. But a checklist thinks a little bit larger. It's thinking on the horizon. It is preparing. It's anticipating what might happen. So there are tasks that happen, but then it's a little bit more things to do under that task. And I'll kind of mine into this for a second. So for instance, I'm planning a missions trip this year, and I could have an informational meeting on my to-do list. Well, there's a lot of things I have to do to have an informational meeting. And so I have to, number one, decide the date. And if you're a part of an organization, that's going to take some mental energy to decide, okay, where am I going to place this that fits in the organization? I got to select a date. Then I have to collect all of the information and put it in a document, make sure it's edited, make sure it's printed. Then I have to figure out how I'm going to communicate to the people that I want at this meeting. There are these layers that are happening, and eventually it's the date that I want to have it.
Yes.
And then I have the thing. I'm going to put the information in their hands. I'm going to say the information I want them to know. But then there's follow-up.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, there's been this lead up, but now I need a system so that people that want to do this thing have a way to sign up and I can follow up with them. There's a lead up, there's a follow up. And so there's this finish line, there's this deadline, and there's this starting line. And you kind of work backwards. And that's how checklists work. You work backwards because you start with the vision and then you say, okay, this is how I'm going to get there. So there's a broad span in our checklist to help us get to the end result.
And this works across the board from events that you have to plan. We plan a lot of events because we're involved in the local church. And so events, you start at the date of the event and you work your way backwards. You put together everything that has to happen. What happens is you become this administrative, like just boss, right?
Yeah.
You could just get some things done administratively. I think a lot of leaders probably would say, hey, one of my greatest weaknesses is administration. You know, I'm a visionary leader. I'm a person who's got a lot of people skills. But when it comes to the organization, and man, we've got to be able to build the muscle that we need in this administrative area in actually order to do something rather than just talk about it.
Right. And you can't just do one thing. I mean, isn't that something that you've shared in the past about how you're not necessarily naturally administrative and you had to learn in ministry because the role required it. There's not like, oh, I just get to cast vision and I get to just show up.
Yeah.
You still have to fill out the forms
Yeah.
and turn it into the accountant. You still have to do it. So what's something that just helped you really strengthen those muscles that you weren't naturally gifted in?
I think it was just acquiring the skills, both through learning and asking questions, but then also acquiring skills through just getting it done and being around a team that really knew how to get things done.
That's good.
You don't want to be the weakest link. And so you basically just got to work until you get better at it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just not letting yourself settle, expecting high performance from yourself and saying, I'm not going to be the kind of person that everybody else has to carry.
Yeah.
I'm not going to leave a mess for everybody else to clean up in my wake.
Yeah.
There's this point when you become a team member that's so valuable to the team that you're saying, hey, I'm going to make sure I'm carrying my weight.
Yeah.
The thing that frustrates me a lot is when I see, as a leader, I see that there has been a task or some kind of event or something that's been happening that now multiple hands have had to touch it because the person who initiated it couldn't carry it on to completion. And so now somebody else has got to come in and it just is like, oh, we are just so sluggish right now. I think the speed of the organization begins to increase when each individual team member is able to step up and begin to deliver on their area.
And they do their job.
Yes.
They do their job.
You had one job.
You had one job. I think if everybody would just do their job,
so good,
then we can play the game.
You hearing this?
And we can win. We can win.
Winning teams are made up of people who do their job.
Yeah.
But I think that's the New England Patriots. I think that's their phrase that their team uses is do your job.
Yeah.
Because if you're blocking right, if I'm running the ball right, if they're passing it right, if the coaches are drawing up the plays right, then they're going to see success. They're going to be a winning team. It's everybody just has to do your job. I like this conversation. I think it's going to be a big encouragement, maybe even push some leaders forward today to say, yeah, I could take more responsibility for the areas that I'm involved, and I could be one of those team members that's not only adding, but I'm a multiplier in those areas. So this has been such a great conversation. I think that it's going to really help some people in their performance to not just be that team member who's just adding a little bit here and there, but someone who's really becoming a multiplier, someone who's really multiplying their efforts, getting the job done, and seeing everything move forward. We're so glad that you were here with us today. Season 2 is in full swing. Share it, like it, subscribe it, comment about it, send us an email. We want to hear from you. We hope this is a blessing to you. Thanks so much for being a part of the Leadership Lab podcast.